It's Monday, the 17th of November, 2025. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's go. Story number 1, an independent review into ANZ is highly critical of the bank's former leadership and culture ever since the Banking Royal Commission, saying it is an insular institution where staff are reluctant to challenge and deliver bad news.
The McKinsey report was prepared for ANZ after it was hit by a series of scandals which led to a $240 million fine for widespread misconduct. In a blistering assessment of former Chief Executive Shane Elliott, the report said ANZ had lacked a tone from the top and found that Australia's fourth largest bank had failed to create a risk and customer-focused culture, while its employees were complacent when problems arose. It identified that the bank was so collaborative and trusting that there was a reluctance to challenge and deliver bad news, and in turn this led to complacency and limited self-reflection and an insular culture. These failings were compounded by a failure of leadership to set the right tone to highlight the importance of non-financial risk. Many of the problems identified at McKinsey's were very similar to those uncovered at Commonwealth Bank back in 2016 after a prudential inquiry by a guy called John Laker. Also evident in the Hayne Banking Royal Commission, still going on at ANZ.
Yeah, and the fact that it all sounds so familiar is disappointing, given we had a Banking Royal Commission to not only work out what was going on in the banking system, but critically to prevent it from happening again.
Yes, now this report actually came out last Friday, late on Friday, not easily accessible. Not a good look to begin with if you're trying to be open around what's going on. The irony of all this is that ANZ really came through the Banking Royal Commission least scathed. Maybe that was a bad thing because it appears to have done least in terms of changing the culture. There were governance failures, staff only giving their bosses good news, failure to highlight the importance of non-financial risk projects would start. Then there'd be cost cutting, they'd never be completed. Money was spent on tech, but not on training people to use that tech. Now, the new CEO, Nuno Matos, said it will take time to change the culture. Given the depth of the problems, it might take quite some time.
On to story number 2 now, Sean, and BHP has been found legally liable for one of the worst environmental disasters in the history of Brazil in a landmark case brought in the UK over the 2015 Mariana Dam collapse.
Over the weekend, the High Court in London ruled that the risk of the structure's collapse had been foreseeable and that BHP was strictly liable for damage caused to the environment and to third parties. BHP said it intends to appeal against the judgment. It's already entered into a $32 billion agreement with Brazilian public authorities and public defenders for a full and final settlement of key claims. Now, putting that aside, lawyers acting on behalf of more than 620,000 alleged victims are seeking up to $72 billion in compensation from BHP and Brazilian miner Vale, which jointly owned the Samarco iron ore project where the incident occurred. The disaster killed 19 people when sludge was released from behind the waste dam at the facility, according to the FT.
Story number 3, the Coalition has launched a technology agnostic, that's their words, energy plan, which includes more gas but is not anti-renewables, according to Liberal leader Susan Lee.
Lee, Shadow Energy Minister Dan Tehan and Nationals leader David Littleproud said last evening that the Coalition's affordable energy plan was better for consumers. The Coalition leader said the government had demonised gas and reluctantly come back to it in recent years because they know its value. Asked when consumers could start seeing cheaper power under a future Coalition government, Lee basically said, well, the Coalition needs to get elected first, then they'll change the rules. She said it's not anti-renewables, but the Coalition understands that the country needs to be in the right place with the right balance with baseload power and renewables. Littleproud said net zero is not the only way to address climate change and for Australia to do its fair share with regards to its emissions.
Sean, it's worth a quick mention of the latest poll results, which are out today. In the Financial Review, the Redbridge Accent Research poll shows that after all of the chaos within the Coalition over the last few weeks, the Coalition's primary vote fell 5 percentage points in 1 month, a record low of 24%, with One Nation rising 4 points to a record high of 18. So the One Nation is actually on the verge of overtaking the Coalition, which is quite extraordinary. On to story number 4 now, Sean. Something a little bit different here. Scientists have discovered a new native bee species with tiny horns and given it the devilish name of well, mega chile or mega chili, depend on how you want to say it, Lucifer. That's the important bit.
It is. Researchers found the bee while observing a rare wildflower that only grows in the Bremer Ranges in Western Australia's Goldfields region, about 500 kilometres east of Perth. The highly distinctive prominent horns are only on the female bee. The study's lead scientist, Kit Prendergast from Curtin University, said she was inspired to use the name Lucifer as she was watching the Netflix show of the same name at the time. It's the first new member of this bee group in 20 years.
Finally, Sean, story number 5, somewhat paradoxically, Australian graziers will be perhaps disappointed that the president cut tariffs. US President Donald Trump, he cut the tariffs on beef over the weekend.
Yeah, so he cut tariffs on a bunch of things, including beef, fruits, coffee, nuts, spices. Thing is, Australian beef exports, the tariffs on our exports into the US were less than New Zealand, less than Brazil. As a result, we are absolutely booming in terms of beef exports. $1.6 billion in the 3 months to September, a 26% rise over the year. With these tariffs coming off, though, not so good for Australian graziers, Michael.
No. There we go, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 17th of November, 2025. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.